So you're walking through a bookstore looking for that awesome new book series you heard about. You don't know where it is, however, so you wander about blindly, searching through every aisle. One of the aisles you look through is the comic book aisle. Some of the titles look interesting and the art is gorgeous, but now you think comic books are just about dumb superheroes, and you move on. Now, most people know about the superhero kind of comic books, but don't know too much about the other kinds. Now, I've been reading comic books for years, and I don't even like the superhero genre very much, so I know quite a bit about the other kinds of shapes it takes place in. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of comic books and its other permutations. Now, in the 1700s in Japan, they had a sort of comic book. They were woodblock prints with a picture and a caption. They looked sort of like this. Print. And they are bound together in sort of a book format. Now, in Italy, in the 1800s, they had fumetti, which were short, funny, satirical comic strips that were published in newspapers, sort of. But the first comic book in the United States was, according to Don Markstein of Toontopedia, a webpage devoted to cartoons, The Adventures of Obadiah Oldbook, which is Old Book, written by a Swiss man named Topfer. It was actually a translation that made its way to the U.S. Mr. Scott McCloud, author of Understanding Comics, called Topfer the father of modern comics for his contribution to comic strips at the time. But he was just the foundation for 1938 Superman and 1939 Batman. That's right, the superhero genre. It truly began in comic books as we know them began to exist. But it's been a really long time since 1939, you know. Things have changed. Different comic books and different styles have emerged. The true crime and horror genres began in the 1950s. In 1960, the term graphic novel was coined, and in 1978, Will Eisner used it to describe his book, A Contract with God and Other Tenement Stories. Graphic novels are a little bit different from comic books. They often delve into much deeper topics, or are aimed at an older or more mature audience. Their drawing style is often more complex and more detailed, and the plot lines are more detailed as well. I'm sorry. Excuse me. A pretty good example of a graphic novel is Maus by Art Spiegelman. Maus talks about Spiegelman's father's experience as a Jew in a Nazi death camp, using mice and cats to represent the Jews and the Nazis. Another good graphic novel example is The Sandman by Neil Gaiman. The Sandman pretty much explores such topics as free will, change, personal responsibility, death, love, rejection, and slavery, and a host of other topics. They're not really so much the superhero dashing in to save the lady from a horrible fate, and more aimed at an older audience. It's more like just a novel with pictures, using pictures to help communicate their ideas to the audience. Now, another kind of graphic novel or comic book that has come into existence is the manga. They're from Japan. They're usually pretty thick books. They have their very own particular drawing style, pretty simplistic usually, actually, and use words and very exaggerated facial expressions a lot of the time to convey the author's ideas to the audience. They are usually categorized according to their intended audience. Shonen, for example, is for boys, and shoujo is for girls. There are some that are categorized according to the particular plot line, like Shonen Ai, for example, is a boys' love, actually, kind of comic book. And I only talked about graphic novels and manga, but there are many different kinds of comic book format books. Now, these are just some of the things that come out of comic books' long and varied history, and they include really short stories and really long stories, complicated art and not so complicated art. They include stories written for entertainment, or actually stories that you have to think about, or you read twice even to understand. Some are more appropriate to a more mature audience, and some are more appropriate just, for fun. So, next time you're in that bookstore, or maybe even in that library, you might want to check out some of the newer comic books or graphic novels. You never know, you might like them. Thank you for listening.